On the morning of what the media called the wedding of the decade, billionaire technology investor, Ethan Calloway stood beneath a 40-foot wall of white roses inside one of the most expensive hotels in New York City, smiling as cameras flashed around him, and hundreds of wealthy guests rose to their feet waiting for his bride to walk down the aisle. The orchestra had already begun playing. Reporters outside were broadcasting live to millions of viewers across the country. Everything about that day looked perfect. But less than 10 minutes later, two crying little girls would run through those golden ballroom doors screaming words that would bring the entire ceremony to a complete stop and expose a secret Ethan had unknowingly been searching for over 6 years. "Daddy, please don't marry her." Those were the exact words the twins screamed as guests turned in confusion and security guards rushed toward them. At first, many people thought it was some kind of cruel prank. Others assumed the children were lost. But the moment Ethan looked into their eyes, the expression on his face changed completely. Because hanging around the neck of one of those little girls was a silver heart-shaped necklace he had once given to a woman named Lily Harper, the woman he loved more than anyone in his life before she disappeared without explanation nearly 7 years earlier. And standing near the entrance of that ballroom, trembling as tears rolled down her face while trying to catch her breath after running through the rain, was Lily herself. The same woman Ethan believed had abandoned him without a single goodbye. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand why that moment shocked everyone inside the ballroom, you first have to understand who Ethan Calloway really was. Long before the headlines, private jets, and billion-dollar empire turned him into one of the most powerful businessmen in America. Ethan grew up in a small town outside Chicago, raised by a single father who worked double shifts repairing trucks just to keep food on the table. Money was always tight. At one point, their electricity was shut off for almost an entire winter, forcing Ethan to study beside candles while his father pretended everything was fine. Friends close to Ethan later said those years shaped the man he would eventually become. He hated feeling powerless. He hated uncertainty. And more than anything, he feared depending on people emotionally because he watched disappointment break his father again and again after his mother walked away from the family when he was only 8 years old. By the age of 28, Ethan had already sold his first software company for millions. By 35, he was appearing on magazine covers beside Hollywood celebrities and politicians. Financial networks called him a genius. Investors called him untouchable. But according to people who worked closely with him, Ethan's private life told a completely different story. Despite the money and fame, he kept almost everyone at a distance. Relationships never lasted long. Women entered his life through luxury parties, business events, and social circles filled with powerful people, but none of them stayed long enough to truly know him. Then one rainy night in Seattle changed everything. It happened after Ethan canceled a major conference appearance due to exhaustion. Instead of attending another private dinner with executives, he wandered alone into a small coffee shop just before closing time. That was where he met Lily Harper. Unlike everyone else around Ethan, Lily had absolutely no idea who he was. She wasn't impressed by expensive watches, bodyguards, or media attention. She was a pediatric nurse working long shifts at a children's hospital nearby. And according to Ethan himself during an interview years later, Lily was the first person in a very long time who spoke to him like he was just another ordinary man trying to survive life. That night, they talked for almost 2 hours while rain slammed against the windows outside. Customers eventually left. Employees cleaned tables around them, and still they kept talking. Ethan spoke about his childhood. Lily spoke about losing her mother to cancer at 16. Ethan laughed more during that conversation than he reportedly had in months. Over the next year, their relationship grew quietly away from cameras and gossip blogs. They traveled together, spent weekends in remote cabins, and built a life that felt strangely normal despite Ethan's fame. Friends later claimed they had never seen him happier. For the first time in years, Ethan stopped obsessing over work every hour of the day. Employees noticed he became calmer, more patient, even kinder. And according to Lily's closest friend, Ethan had secretly begun searching for engagement rings only weeks before everything fell apart. But another person had also been watching their relationship closely. Her name was Vanessa Sinclair. Publicly, Vanessa was known as one of the sharpest marketing executives in Ethan's company. Elegant, intelligent, and highly respected in corporate circles, she had spent years working her way into Ethan's inner circle. Many people assumed the two would eventually become a couple because Vanessa always seemed present during important moments in Ethan's life. What nobody understood at the time was how deeply Vanessa wanted more than friendship or business influence. Former employees later described her as someone who hated losing control over situations. She studied people carefully. She understood weaknesses. And according to one former assistant, Vanessa became noticeably colder every time Lily's name was mentioned around the office. At first, Ethan failed to notice the tension. Lily herself tried avoiding conflict and even encouraged Ethan to appreciate Vanessa's loyalty to the company. But privately, small incidents began happening that slowly created cracks in Ethan and Lily's relationship. Important messages never reached Ethan. Dinner plans were mysteriously canceled after sudden emergencies at work. Lily once claimed Ethan ignored her birthday, even though Ethan later insisted he never received the invitation she sent weeks earlier. Tiny misunderstandings began stacking on top of each other until trust slowly started breaking apart piece by piece. And then came the night Lily disappeared completely. 3 days before Christmas, Ethan arrived at Lily's apartment carrying flowers and a small velvet box hidden inside his coat pocket. He planned to propose that night. But when he reached her apartment building, everything was dark. Neighbors claimed Lily had packed several bags and left suddenly earlier that afternoon. Her phone was disconnected. Her social media accounts vanished. Even the hospital where she worked claimed she had resigned unexpectedly. Ethan reportedly spent weeks trying to track her down. He hired private investigators. He contacted friends, hospitals, and airports across multiple states. Nothing. It was as if Lily Harper had disappeared from existence overnight. The emotional impact nearly destroyed him. According to people close to Ethan, he became colder than ever after that. He buried himself in work, stopped attending social events, and refused to speak publicly about Lily. But what Ethan never knew was that Lily had not abandoned him willingly. At the exact moment Ethan believed she had walked away forever, Lily was hiding hundreds of miles away in a small town in Colorado carrying a secret that would eventually change everything. She was pregnant with Ethan's twins. Lily Harper had every reason to return to Ethan Calloway and tell him the truth. For weeks after leaving Seattle, she reportedly tried contacting him repeatedly from different numbers and email accounts while staying with an older family friend in Colorado. According to details later uncovered by investigators, none of those messages ever reached Ethan. Some disappeared completely, while others were mysteriously redirected through company channels connected to Vanessa Sinclair's executive office. At the time, Lily had no idea how deeply Vanessa's influence reached into Ethan's world. She only knew that every attempt to explain herself somehow failed. And as the months passed, fear slowly replaced hope. Lily was pregnant, emotionally exhausted, financially struggling, and increasingly convinced Ethan no longer wanted her in his life. The situation became even worse during the final months of her pregnancy, when complications forced her into repeated hospital visits. Medical bills began piling up. Her health declined rapidly. Yet through all of it, she kept a small silver necklace beside her bed every night. The same necklace Ethan had once placed around her neck during a quiet weekend trip to Vermont, while promising they would never lose each other no matter how difficult life became. According to Lily's friend Rachel Monroe, Lily cried almost every night after the twins were born because she believed Ethan had chosen silence over love. But even then, she still refused to speak badly about him in front of the children. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continued moving in the opposite direction. Within 3 years, his company expanded internationally, turning him into one of the youngest billionaires in the country. Financial magazines praised his discipline and focus, while business reporters admired how he transformed personal heartbreak into relentless ambition. What the public failed to see was how emotionally isolated he had become behind closed doors. Employees noticed Ethan barely smiled anymore unless cameras were present. He slept inside his office during major negotiations and reportedly worked through holidays without speaking to family or friends. Vanessa Sinclair gradually became the one constant presence in his life during that period. She handled interviews, public appearances, charity events, and eventually personal matters as well. To outsiders, Vanessa appeared loyal and supportive, always protecting Ethan from unnecessary stress while helping him manage his empire. Slowly, rumors of romance began spreading through business circles. At first, Ethan denied them, but over time, loneliness and routine blurred the line between companionship and love. By the 5th year after Lily's disappearance, Vanessa had fully positioned herself beside him both publicly and privately. Then came the engagement announcement that dominated headlines across the country. News channels called them America's new power couple. Luxury brands offered sponsorships for the wedding. Media outlets competed for exclusive coverage rights. Yet, according to one former employee who later spoke anonymously, Vanessa became unusually anxious during the months leading up to the ceremony. She increased private security around Ethan, monitored staff communications obsessively, and once fired an assistant after discovering old archived emails connected to Lily Harper's name. At the time, nobody understood why she was behaving that way. But 6 years of buried lies were slowly approaching a breaking point. Far away from New York's luxury hotels and television cameras, Lily Harper was raising 2 little girls who looked more and more like Ethan every single year. Ava and Emma Harper were energetic, emotional, and inseparable. Lily worked exhausting hospital shifts while struggling to give them a stable life, often sleeping only a few hours each night before returning to work again. Yet, despite the hardships, she never allowed bitterness to poison the way she spoke about their father. She told the twins Ethan was kind, intelligent, and once loved them deeply before life somehow pulled them apart. As the girls grew older, they began asking harder questions. Why did Daddy visit them? Why didn't he call? Why were other children spending holidays with their fathers while they only had old photographs and stories? Lily rarely knew how to answer. According to Rachel Monroe, there were nights when Lily sat alone in her kitchen after the twins fell asleep staring at Ethan's old photographs, while wondering if he had truly forgotten her, or if something much larger had kept them separated all those years. Then one evening changed everything. While preparing dinner, Lily saw Ethan and Vanessa's engagement interview playing on television. The twins immediately recognized Ethan from old pictures stored inside Lily's bedroom drawer. "That's Daddy," one of them reportedly whispered before both girls ran closer to the television screen. Lily stood frozen in silence as reporters discussed the upcoming wedding date scheduled only 3 weeks away in New York City. And for the first time in years, something inside her shifted completely. Because suddenly, the fear that once kept her away no longer mattered nearly as much as the thought of her daughters growing up believing their father abandoned them willingly. Over the next several days, Lily began revisiting pieces of the past she had tried desperately to forget. She searched through old emails, hospital records, and storage boxes filled with memories from her relationship with Ethan. Hidden inside one damaged envelope was a printed document she had overlooked years earlier. It was a forwarded email chain accidentally sent to her by one of Ethan's former assistants shortly before the twins were born. The contents left her shaking. Several of Lily's old messages to Ethan had been intercepted internally through a private executive account linked directly to Vanessa Sinclair's office. One message even contained Lily's ultrasound photo alongside a desperate paragraph begging Ethan to call her because she was pregnant and scared. The email had never reached him. Instead, records showed it had been deleted minutes after arriving. Lily reportedly broke down crying after realizing the truth. Ethan had never abandoned her. Someone had deliberately kept them apart. According to Rachel, Lily spent almost the entire night sitting awake while the twins slept nearby before finally making a decision just before sunrise. She was going to New York. She was going to tell Ethan the truth face to face no matter who tried stopping her. But by the time Lily and the twins arrived in Manhattan 2 days before the wedding, Vanessa Sinclair had already learned they were coming. According to later reports from hotel staff and former company employees, Vanessa Sinclair's behavior became increasingly tense the moment she received confirmation that Lily Harper had checked into a small hotel less than 3 miles from the wedding venue. One employee claimed Vanessa, immediately canceled multiple public appearances that week and ordered additional private security around Ethan without giving a clear explanation. Another source said she spent hours locked inside her office making frantic phone calls while repeatedly asking whether anyone had spoken to a woman traveling with 2 little girls. Yet despite the panic building around her, Vanessa still moved forward with the wedding preparations as if nothing was wrong. Publicly, she smiled beside Ethan during rehearsals, charity dinners, and magazine interviews. Cameras captured them laughing together, while headlines described their relationship as the perfect modern love story. But privately, Vanessa understood something terrifying. If Ethan saw Lily again, even for a single moment, years of carefully constructed lies could collapse instantly. And the closer the wedding day came, the harder it became to control the situation. Meanwhile, Lily Harper struggled with a completely different fear. Every time she looked at Ava and Emma sleeping beside her inside that small Manhattan hotel room, doubt crept into her mind again. What if Ethan refused to believe her? What if 6 years had changed him completely? What if showing up destroyed the little stability her daughters still had? According to Rachel Monroe, who remained in constant contact by phone, Lily nearly canceled the trip multiple times. She was terrified of humiliating herself in front of powerful people who already viewed her as a ghost from Ethan's past. But the twins themselves unknowingly kept pushing her forward. Ava spent most of the trip asking whether Daddy would finally hug them when he saw them, while Emma carried Ethan's old photograph everywhere they went through the city. Late the night before the wedding, Lily reportedly stood outside the massive hotel, hosting the ceremony, staring at the lights shining through the ballroom windows, while limousines arrived one after another carrying celebrities, executives, and politicians. She could have walked away right then. Nobody knew she was there. Ethan remained unaware she was only steps away from him for the first time in nearly 7 years. But before leaving, Lily noticed something unexpected through the lobby entrance. Ethan himself was standing alone near a hallway speaking quietly on the phone, and for a brief moment, the expression on his face looked nothing like the confident billionaire the public admired. He looked exhausted, empty, almost lonely. Lily later admitted that seeing that expression confirmed what she had secretly hoped for years. A part of Ethan had been hurting too. The morning of the wedding arrived beneath heavy rain clouds covering Manhattan's skyline. News vans crowded the streets outside the hotel, while reporters described the ceremony as one of the most expensive private weddings in recent American history. Inside the ballroom, workers made final adjustments to thousands of white roses imported from Europe, while a live orchestra rehearsed beside crystal chandeliers worth more than most homes. Ethan Calloway stood inside a private suite, surrounded by assistants adjusting his tuxedo, while photographers captured images for magazines already preparing special editions about the wedding. Yet according to Ethan's longtime driver, something felt wrong from the beginning of that morning. Ethan barely spoke during the ride to the venue. He stared silently through the window most of the time, while absent-mindedly touching the old silver watch Lily once gave him years earlier, a habit he reportedly returned to whenever stress overwhelmed him emotionally. Moments before the ceremony began, Ethan even asked one strange question that surprised everyone nearby. "Do you ever wonder if life can completely change because of one decision?" Nobody answered, because nobody understood what he meant. But less than 20 minutes later, his entire future would change forever. As guests filled the ballroom and cameras prepared for the bride's entrance, Lily Harper sat trembling inside a taxi several blocks away with Ava and Emma beside her. Rain hammered against the windows, while traffic slowed to a near standstill around the hotel district. According to the taxi driver, Lily looked moments away from turning back several times during the ride. Her hands shook uncontrollably. The twins sensed her fear and held onto her tightly while asking whether they were late. Then suddenly, Emma looked up from the old photograph she had been carrying and quietly said something Lily would later remember for the rest of her life. "If Daddy doesn't know we exist, then maybe he's waiting for us too." Those words broke whatever hesitation remained inside her. By the time the taxi stopped outside the hotel, the ceremony had already started upstairs. Guests were standing. The orchestra was playing. Vanessa Sinclair had just begun walking slowly toward Ethan beneath hundreds of glowing lights, while millions of dollars in media coverage surrounded them. Security guards near the entrance initially tried stopping Lily and the twins from entering once they realized they were not invited guests. But according to witnesses, Ava suddenly broke free and ran toward the elevators screaming, "We have to find Daddy before it's too late." Emma immediately followed behind her. And within seconds, both little girls disappeared into the crowd before anyone could catch them. Upstairs inside the ballroom, Vanessa Sinclair was only steps away from Ethan when the massive doors suddenly burst open. At first, guests turned in annoyance thinking someone had interrupted the ceremony accidentally. Then came the sound that instantly changed the atmosphere inside the room. Crying. Desperate crying from two terrified little girls running straight down the center aisle. Witnesses later described the moment as surreal because the twins looked completely out of place, surrounded by billionaires, celebrities, and television cameras. Their tiny shoes slapped loudly against the marble floor while security guards rushed after them from behind. Then Ava screamed the words that stopped the entire wedding cold. "Daddy, please don't marry her," the orchestra cut off abruptly. Gasps spread across the ballroom. Vanessa froze instantly. And Ethan Calloway slowly turned toward the children standing only a few feet away from him. According to multiple witnesses, the expression on Ethan's face changed the moment he saw the necklace hanging around Emma's neck. It was Lily's necklace, the exact silver heart necklace Ethan personally designed years earlier during their relationship. Silence filled the ballroom as the twins stared up at him, crying uncontrollably. Then Emma whispered something so quietly many guests almost missed it. "Mummy said you would know us when you saw us." And in that moment, before a single explanation was spoken, Ethan already knew the truth. For several long seconds, nobody inside the ballroom moved. The guests who had spent the morning laughing and recording videos now stood frozen in absolute silence as Ethan Calloway stared at the two little girls in front of him. According to witnesses seated near the front row, Ethan looked like a man watching his entire past suddenly come back to life in front of hundreds of people. Ava and Emma clung tightly to each other while tears rolled down their faces, and although security guards had finally caught up behind them, nobody dared pull the twins away after seeing Ethan's reaction. Then the impossible happened. Ethan slowly stepped away from the altar, ignoring Vanessa Sinclair completely, and knelt directly in front of the girls. One guest later described the moment by saying Ethan's hands were shaking so badly he could barely speak. "What are your names?" he asked softly. "Ava and Emma Harper," one of the twins answered. "Our mommy said you used to love her." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow, because there was only one woman connected to that necklace, that last name, and the kind of pain now written all over those children's faces. Lily Harper, the woman he had spent years trying and failing to forget. Then before Ethan could say another word, a familiar voice echoed from the ballroom entrance. "Ethan!" Every head in the room turned at once. And standing beneath the giant doorway soaked from rain, with tears running down her face, was Lily herself. Several guests later admitted they genuinely believed they were witnessing some kind of stage drama at first, because the moment felt almost unreal. Vanessa Sinclair's face reportedly lost all color the instant Lily appeared. One wedding planner claimed Vanessa grabbed the edge of a nearby chair just to steady herself, while Ethan stood frozen in disbelief, staring at the woman he once loved more than anything. Lily looked exhausted, emotional, and terrified all at once. Years of struggle were visible on her face, yet Ethan recognized her instantly. According to people standing close enough to hear, he whispered her name so quietly it barely sounded real. Lily slowly walked forward while guests moved aside in stunned silence. Cameras from media crews continued recording everything because nobody had been told to stop filming yet. The twins immediately ran back toward Lily, crying as she held them tightly before finally looking directly at Ethan again. "I tried to tell you," she said through tears. "I tried for years." Ethan looked completely overwhelmed. "Tell me what?" he asked. Lily reached into her bag with trembling hands and pulled out several folded papers along with printed emails. "I never left you willingly," she said. "Someone made sure you would never hear from me." At that exact moment, according to multiple witnesses, Ethan slowly turned toward Vanessa. And for the first time since the interruption began, genuine fear appeared in her eyes. The ballroom erupted into chaos shortly afterward. Guests whispered frantically, while reporters outside began receiving leaks from inside the ceremony. Ethan reportedly ignored everyone around him as Lily explained the truth piece by piece. She told him about the pregnancy, the unanswered messages, the medical complications, and the years she spent believing he had abandoned her intentionally. At first, Ethan struggled to process everything he was hearing. But when Lily handed him copies of deleted email records connected directly to Vanessa Sinclair's executive office, the atmosphere shifted completely. According to one company employee who attended the wedding, Ethan's expression changed from confusion to quiet anger almost instantly. Vanessa attempted denying everything at first. She claimed the emails had been manipulated or misunderstood. But Lily had more than emotional accusations. She had records, timestamps, archived communications, and statements from a former assistant who eventually admitted that Vanessa ordered multiple messages deleted years earlier. The deeper Ethan looked into the evidence, the clearer the truth became. Vanessa had spent years carefully controlling the information reaching him. She intercepted Lily's attempts to reconnect. She manipulated misunderstandings. She isolated Ethan emotionally until she became the only person he trusted completely. And according to later financial investigations, her manipulation extended far beyond their relationship. Company auditors eventually uncovered suspicious transactions and hidden financial movements connected to accounts Vanessa secretly controlled through shell corporations tied to Ethan's business empire. But despite the shocking revelations unfolding around him, the moment many guests remembered most had nothing to do with money or betrayal. It happened quietly near the center of the ballroom, while reporters screamed questions outside and security tried containing the growing media frenzy. Ava, one of the twins, looked up at Ethan with tears still in her eyes and asked the question she had apparently waited years to ask. "Are you really our daddy?" Witnesses later said the room became silent again after those words. Ethan looked at the little girls standing before him, then toward Lily, and finally back at the necklace he once gave away believing it represented a future that had been lost forever. Then he did something nobody expected from a man known publicly for emotional distance and control. He broke down crying, not quietly, not briefly. Years of grief, regret, confusion, and loneliness seemed to hit him all at once as he pulled both twins into his arms while guests watched in stunned silence. "Yes," he whispered repeatedly while holding them tightly. "Yes, I'm your father." Even some staff members reportedly cried watching the reunion unfold. Because beneath the billionaire headlines, luxury suits, and media attention was simply a man realizing he had lost nearly 7 years with his own daughters because of lies he never saw coming. By evening, what was supposed to become the most celebrated wedding in New York had transformed into one of the biggest public scandals of the year. News helicopters circled above the hotel, while social media exploded with leaked footage of the twins interrupting the ceremony. Clips of Ethan kneeling in front of Ava and Emma spread across television networks nationwide within hours. Public opinion turned against Vanessa Sinclair almost immediately after details of the intercepted messages became public. Former employees began speaking anonymously to reporters about years of manipulative behavior inside Ethan's company. Financial investigators soon launched formal inquiries into several business transactions connected to Vanessa's executive department. Meanwhile, Vanessa herself disappeared from public view completely after leaving the hotel through a private exit surrounded by attorneys. Some reports claimed she attempted contacting Ethan multiple times afterward, but according to sources close to him, he refused every request. The engagement was officially canceled before midnight. Yet while reporters focused on scandal and betrayal, Ethan spent the remainder of that night somewhere much quieter. Inside a private penthouse away from cameras, he sat on the floor beside Ava and Emma listening to stories about their favorite cartoons, school memories, and the birthdays he never knew existed. One employee delivering food later claimed Ethan looked happier sitting there with his daughters than he ever looked during years of public success and luxury. Over the following months, Ethan began stepping away from the non-stop corporate lifestyle that once consumed him completely. Friends noticed changes almost immediately. He reduced public appearances, spent more time with Lily and the twins, and even started visiting the small Colorado town where they had lived quietly for years. According to people close to the family, rebuilding trust between Ethan and Lily was not simple. Too much time had passed. Too much pain existed between them. But for the first time in years, both finally understood they had been victims of the same deception rather than enemies who abandoned each other. Ethan reportedly struggled most with guilt over the years he missed watching his daughters grow up. He attended school events obsessively, learned bedtime routines, and tried making up for lost time however he could. One family friend later shared that Ethan once sat silently for almost an hour watching Ava and Emma sleep because he still could not believe they were real. As for Lily, people noticed she slowly became lighter emotionally after years of carrying everything alone. The fear and exhaustion that once surrounded her began fading little by little as stability finally entered their lives again. Yet even years later, one question still followed the story everywhere it was discussed online. What would have happened if those twins never ran into that ballroom? Would Ethan Calloway have married Vanessa Sinclair without ever learning the truth? Would Ava and Emma have grown up believing their father abandoned them willingly? And perhaps most disturbing of all, how many lives can be permanently changed when one person decides to control the truth for their own selfish desires? Because in the end, this story was never really about wealth, luxury, or public scandal. It was about lost time, about manipulation, about two little girls innocent enough to run into a room full of strangers simply because they believed their father deserved to know they existed. And strangely enough, that single moment of childhood honesty succeeded where years of power, money, and influence failed completely. Ethan Calloway spent most of his life believing success could solve almost everything. But the most important thing he ever found in his life arrived not through business deals or billion-dollar negotiations, but through two crying little girls running down a wedding aisle calling him daddy. If this story touched you in any way, let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think Ethan should have forgiven Lily sooner, or was Vanessa entirely responsible for what happened between them? And tell us honestly, if those twins never walked into that wedding, would the truth have ever come out? Stories like this remind us how one hidden lie can change multiple lives forever. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next emotional true storytelling documentary. And trust me, the next story we're about to share might be even more shocking than this one.